July 24, 1943. Hamburg, Germany. 23:57 hours. Obergefreiter Werner Hoffmann, 24, sat at his Würzburg radar console in a darkened bunker outside Hamburg, tracking incoming bomber formations. The radar screen showed what he expected: bright green blips indicating aircraft, moving steadily toward Hamburg from the northwest. Approximately 700 bombers, according to his count. Hoffmann had guided night fighters to intercept British bombers dozens of times. The procedure was routine: track bomber formations with radar, vector night fighters to intercept positions, guide fighters to visual contact, watch bombers fall from the sky. But at midnight, something impossible appeared on his screen. The bomber formations multiplied. Each aircraft became 5, then 10, then hundreds of targets. Within minutes, his radar screen was solid green. Thousands of targets, tens of thousands. The entire screen glowed uniformly. He couldn't distinguish real aircraft from false returns. Hoffmann reported equipment malfunction. Every other radar station reported the same malfunction simultaneously. But the equipment wasn't malfunctioning. The British had just deployed a countermeasure that would blind German radar for the remainder of the war. What Hoffmann witnessed was window. Americans called it chaff, thin strips of aluminum foil cut to specific lengths matching German radar wavelengths, dropped by the ton from bomber streams, creating millions of false radar returns. For the cost of aluminum and labor, the British had neutralized Germany's radar-directed air defense system. What happened over Hamburg that night would show the Luftwaffe that technological superiority was temporary, and that simple countermeasures could defeat complex systems. By July 1943, German air defense relied fundamentally on radar. The integrated system included early warning radars detecting formations at long range, precision tracking radars guiding night fighters and searchlights to bomber positions, and gun-laying radars directing anti-aircraft artillery fire. This system was sophisticated, effective, and represented years of development and billions of Reichsmarks investment. The Würzburg radar was the system's heart. Operating at 53-centimeter wavelength, Würzburg provided accurate azimuth and elevation data for targets out to 40 kilometers. Night fighter controllers used this information to vector fighters to within visual range of bombers. The system worked well. British bomber losses averaged 7% per mission over Germany in early 1943, an unsustainable rate. British scientists understood German radar capabilities from captured equipment and intelligence reports. They developed countermeasures at the Telecommunications Research Establishment. The simplest and most effective countermeasure was window, proposed in 1942, but delayed from deployment due to fears that Germans would use the same tactic against British radar. By mid-1943, British night fighter defenses relied less on radar than German defenses did. British fears of reciprocal window use diminished. The decision to deploy window was approved in June 1943. The target for first operational use was Hamburg, Germany's second-largest city and a critical industrial center. Window consisted of aluminum foil strips 27 centimeters long, half the wavelength of Würzburg radar. When radar waves struck these strips, they reflected back to the receiver just like aircraft would. Each strip created a radar return. Dropping thousands of strips created thousands of returns. The radar couldn't distinguish aluminum strips from bombers. Manufacturing window required only aluminum foil, cutting machines, and packaging. British factories produced millions of window strips in preparation for Operation Gomorrah, the code name for the Hamburg bombing campaign. Each bomber carried approximately 2,000 bundles. Each bundle contained 2,000 strips. The lead aircraft in each formation began dropping window bundles as they crossed the German coast. The effect on German radar was immediate and catastrophic. Obergefreiter Hoffmann's experience was repeated at every radar station across northern Germany. Screens that had shown distinct bomber formations now showed solid clouds of returns. Tracking individual bombers became impossible. Vectoring night fighters to intercept positions was impossible. The entire radar-based air defense system collapsed instantly. German night fighter controllers attempted to adapt. Some controllers tried talking fighters into window clouds hoping to find bombers visually. This occasionally worked but was inefficient and dangerous. Fighters flew blind through clouds of bombers hoping for visual acquisition. Sometimes they found targets. More often they wandered uselessly burning fuel while bombers struck unhindered. Ground-based anti-aircraft artillery suffered similar degradation. Gun-laying radars saw the same false returns as tracking radars. Barrage fire without radar direction was less accurate. The carefully coordinated air defense system that had inflicted heavy losses on British bombers for 2 years was effectively neutralized in one night. The bombing of Hamburg, over 7 nights from July 24 to August 3, 1943, killed approximately 42,000 people and destroyed 60% of the city. The firestorm created by concentrated incendiary bombing was the most destructive air raid to that date. British bomber losses were 2.8%, far below the previous average. Window had worked beyond optimistic projections. Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, commander of the Luftwaffe, demanded immediate countermeasures. German radar engineers analyzed captured window bundles from crashed bombers. The technology was insultingly simple. Aluminum strips. Nothing sophisticated, nothing that required advanced engineering. Yet it had defeated Germany's radar network completely. Developing effective countermeasures proved difficult. The fundamental problem was that radar couldn't distinguish between metal strips and metal aircraft. Both reflected radar waves identically. Some technical solutions were attempted. The Naxos system detected radiation from British aircraft radar systems, allowing fighters to home on bombers using their own radar. This worked to some extent but required bombers to operate radar, which many didn't during bomb runs. The wild sow, wild boar tactic used day fighters at night over target areas. These fighters patrolled above bomber altitude, using fires on the ground for illumination and visual acquisition. This tactic achieved some success, but was limited by weather, pilot skill, and aircraft endurance. It wasn't a systematic solution to the window problem. Ultimately, German air defense never fully countered window. They adapted tactics to minimize its impact but never negated it. British and American bombers dropped window on every mission for the remainder of the war. German radar operators learned to work with degraded information, but radar effectiveness never recovered to pre-window levels. The broader implications of window extended beyond tactical air defense. It demonstrated that electronic warfare and countermeasures were crucial aspects of modern combat. The side that could deny enemy sensors while protecting their own sensors gained significant advantage. This realization drove development of electronic warfare as a distinct military discipline. German radar operators' personal accounts describe the psychological impact of window. Hoffmann, the operator who witnessed the first window deployment, was interviewed in 1954. His recollection remained vivid. "I thought my equipment had failed catastrophically. Every aircraft on the screen multiplied into hundreds of returns. I reported malfunction immediately. Within minutes, every station reported the same thing. We understood then that this wasn't equipment failure. The enemy had done something to our radar, but we didn't understand what or how. Controllers ordered night fighters to patrol areas where we thought bombers were, but we couldn't guide them precisely. Fighters reported seeing bombers but missing intercepts because we couldn't give accurate vectors. We felt helpless. Our training and equipment were suddenly useless. The confidence we'd had in our ability to defeat British bombers disappeared that night. The sense of technological inadequacy that window created was significant. German radar operators had been confident in their equipment and their role. They'd successfully vectored fighters to shoot down hundreds of British bombers. Window shattered that confidence. The realization that simple countermeasures could defeat sophisticated systems was demoralizing. If something as crude as aluminum strips could blind radar, what other simple solutions had Germans overlooked? American forces adopted window immediately, calling it Chaff. American B-17 and B-24 bombers dropped Chaff on every daylight mission over Germany from late 1943 onward. American Chaff was cut to different lengths to match different German radar frequencies. Some bundles targeted early warning radar. Others targeted fire control radar. The diversity of Chaff types forced Germans to deal with multiple countermeasures simultaneously. The industrial capacity required to produce chaff in wartime quantities was substantial but manageable. American aluminum production was sufficient to provide chaff for every bomber mission while still producing aircraft, vehicles, and other war materiel. The cost of chaff was trivial compared to its effectiveness. Spending thousands of dollars on aluminum strips that saved bombers worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and crews worth years of training was obviously worthwhile. German attempts to produce and use similar countermeasures against Allied radar came too late and in insufficient quantities. Some German aircraft used Duppel, their equivalent of window, but German bomber operations by late 1943 were so limited that countermeasures had minimal strategic impact. The asymmetry was telling. Allies could afford to produce chaff in unlimited quantities and deploy it on thousands of bomber missions. Germany couldn't match this scale even if the technology was identical. The development of window demonstrated the value of systematic scientific research applied to military problems. British telecommunications research establishment scientists analyzed German radar technically, identified vulnerabilities, developed countermeasures, tested them, and prepared industrial production, all in a coordinated systematic program. Germany had talented scientists and engineers, but lacked equivalent systematic coordination of research, development, and production. After the war, radar countermeasures became a permanent feature of military aviation. Every military aircraft carried chaff dispensers. Radar warning receivers detected enemy radar. Jamming equipment disrupted radar signals. The entire field of electronic warfare evolved from the simple aluminum strips dropped over Hamburg in July 1943. Modern stealth aircraft represent the ultimate evolution of Window's basic principle. Defeat radar by manipulating how electromagnetic waves interact with your platform. The lesson of Window applies broadly to technological competition. Complex systems often have simple vulnerabilities. The system designer focuses on making the technology work optimally under expected conditions. The attacker focuses on creating unexpected conditions that exploit system assumptions. Radar assumed returns came from solid metal objects like aircraft. Aluminum strips were solid metal objects. The radar couldn't distinguish them. This obvious vulnerability wasn't addressed because designers didn't anticipate someone would exploit it so simply. Today, electronic warfare and cyber operations follow similar patterns. Complex computer systems are vulnerable to simple attacks exploiting assumptions designers made. Sophisticated networks are disrupted by flooding them with traffic. Advanced encryption is bypassed by stealing passwords through social engineering. The technological sophistication of systems doesn't correlate directly with their resistance to attack. Sometimes the simplest attacks against sophisticated systems are most effective. At the Royal Air Force Museum in London, bundles of original window chaff are displayed alongside German Würzburg radar equipment. The contrast is striking. The radar is a complex assembly of precision electronics, mechanical components, sophisticated engineering. The window bundle is aluminum foil strips in a paper wrapper. Yet the simple defeated the complex completely. A placard explains that window exemplifies asymmetric warfare. Low-cost countermeasures defeating high-cost systems. This remains a fundamental principle in military technology competition. A museum visitor comment from 2018, written by an electronic warfare officer, reflected on Window's legacy. I fly an aircraft filled with millions of dollars of electronic warfare equipment designed to defeat enemy radar and communications. The principles we use are fundamentally the same as Window in 1943. Create false targets, deny accurate information, force opponents to make decisions with degraded data. Window was the first operational electronic warfare system. Everything we do today evolved from those aluminum strips. The lesson is that the side that controls electromagnetic spectrum controls the battlefield. In 1943, Britain took control of the radar spectrum over Germany and never relinquished it. German radar operators never forgot the night Window appeared. For experienced operators, it marked the moment when German air defenses shifted from effective to desperate. Before Window, they'd been confident in their ability to detect, track, and vector fighters to bombers. After window, they operated in constant degradation, hoping for lucky breaks rather than expecting systematic success. The psychological dimension of technological surprise is significant. German operators trained extensively on Würzburg radar. They trusted the equipment. They believed in the integrated air defense system. Window shattered that trust instantly. The equipment that had worked perfectly for years suddenly became unreliable. This wasn't equipment failure from wear or damage. This was deliberate enemy action making their equipment useless. The distinction mattered psychologically. Equipment failures can be repaired. Enemy countermeasures require new technology or tactics that might not exist. The speed of Windows deployment also mattered. British scientists developed it in 1942. Within a year, it was operational and deployed on massive scale. German countermeasures took years to develop and were never fully effective. The tempo of technological adaptation favored the side with greater scientific and industrial resources. Britain and America could develop, produce, and deploy countermeasures faster than Germany could develop counters to those countermeasures. This cycle of measure and countermeasure continues in modern warfare. Radar technology improved to filter chaff. Chaff technology improved to defeat improved radar. Radar improved further. The competition continues. But the fundamental advantage remains with the side that can iterate faster and deploy more widely. In World War II, that was the Allies. The pattern established in 1943 continued through the war and beyond. Obergefreiter Hoffmann survived the war and worked in radar engineering for West German telecommunications companies. In his final interview in 1989, shortly before his death, he reflected on July 24, 1943. That night changed how I thought about technology. Before window, I believed sophisticated engineering created superiority that simple methods couldn't overcome. Window proved that simple methods exploiting fundamental principles can defeat sophisticated engineering. The lesson stayed with me through my entire career. Never assume your technology is invulnerable. Always ask how an intelligent adversary might defeat it simply. Usually they can if they think creatively enough. That lesson remains valid. Sophisticated systems have assumptions built into them. Attackers exploiting those assumptions can defeat systems far more advanced than the attack tools themselves. Aluminum strips defeated precision radar. USB drives bypass network security. Social engineering defeats authentication systems. The pattern is consistent. Simplicity exploiting assumptions beats complexity relying on assumptions. In July 1943, German radar operators learned this lesson catastrophically. Their sophisticated radar network was blinded by aluminum foil. The technology that had protected Germany for years became unreliable overnight. And unlike equipment that breaks and can be fixed, this was a fundamental vulnerability that couldn't be engineered away given available technology and time. Window proved that in technological competition, the clever defeat the sophisticated more often than expected, and that the side that adapts faster wins regardless of who started with better technology. Germany had better radar in 1940. Britain had better countermeasures by 1943. Adaptability beat initial superiority. That remains true today. Initial technology leadership doesn't guarantee sustained advantage. The winner is whoever adapts faster when opponents develop countermeasures. Germany couldn't adapt fast enough. The radar advantage they'd held for 3 years disappeared in one night, and it never came back.